Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about shop layouts and specifically some of the different lines of thinking when it goes to how you should lay out your shop, some of the different considerations you should make when laying out your shop, and why a lot of times it doesn't really matter as long as you can get something that works right now. So with all that said, let's get started with a word from our sponsors. It's me, I'm the sponsor. With all the different ways you can lay out your workshop, there's several things that you should take into account before you start placing your first tool. And I know myself, I struggled to find what layout would work for me. And for me, it's still a work in progress. I'm not sure if I'm happy with the way things are at the moment, but it's what I have and it's functional at the moment. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your workflow and the products you're making. So if you're making a lot of small products and you're mainly using one or two tools, the layout doesn't matter too much because you don't need to go through a very long process of going back and forth between 5 or 6 tools, or you likely at that point don't need a lot of room for assembly or anything like that. So the layout doesn't matter that much. And honestly, for smaller shops, layout is a little, it's a big concern, but not as important, I would say. So it's a big concern as in the floor space is limited and you don't necessarily have the room to put it exactly the way you want it. But also because it's so small and so compact, you can literally turn any direction in your shop likely and get to whatever tool you're looking for. So the layout is a little less important in that matter. Do you need to break down sheet goods? How do you break down your sheet goods? You can break down your sheet goods here at the table saw. You can break down your sheet goods with a track saw or like a Craig AccuCut track saw equivalent, I guess. Or you can just lay down a piece of wood and use a regular circular saw to cut your plywood. What sorts of things are you building? Are you building things that are always the same? Are you building things that are always custom order and they will never be the same? Those are questions you need to ask yourself because the process of making the products will dictate kind of how the layout looks. Lastly, do you plan on mass producing any one product or any group of products? If you're going to mass produce things and you want to be efficient as possible, you will want your shop layout in such a manner that the tools are in order of need. So if you're going to make a simple, let's say, coffee table and it uses rough lumber and all you need is the chop saw and the table saw. Well, likely you could go in either direction, but you would want the chop saw and the table saw as close to each other as possible. That way you don't have to transport your materials from this area to the other area, and it's an easy transition from either running your boards through the table saw and then moving over to the chop saw, or vice versa, where you chop everything at the chop saw and then the table saw is right here and you can get right to going on ripping your boards down to their width. Our next topic sucks. Literally, it's a dust collector. It sucks.
That was really stupid.
So a consideration you want to make when you're trying to lay everything out is dust collection. Do you care about dust collection? Are you okay with just cleaning up the sawdust and chips that come out after you're done? Do you have the space for dust collection? If you do have the space for dust collection, what kind of space do you have? Do you have space for a dedicated dust collector? Do you have space for a shop vac only? Would you like to have the dust collector collect the dust from all of your tools and the chips? Or would you rather have the dust collector collect just the high volume producers like the jointer and planer and maybe get a shop vac or two to handle the smaller tools such as the table saw and the chop saw. These are considerations you need to make because that can also affect the way you should plan your layout of your tools. Depending on the size of your shop, if you decide to go with a full-blown dust collector, the capacity of your dust collector, the suction power, how good can it suck? You guys know what I mean by that. We need something that sucks good.
Oh, yeah.
That will determine how far your tools can be placed from your dust collection source. And in some cases, you may want to put all of your tools that need, let's say, a high volume of dust collection in the same area. For me, my dust collector collects dust from everything and the high volume sources, but you may have better experiences by using the dust collector for just a jointer and a planer. And if those tools are separate, you may want to have those maybe back to back or at least in the same general area. So you only have to run one run over to those tools, and that greatly decreases the amount of piping you need. It keeps the airflow up because there's not more pressure it's got to create to get the negative pressure from those other runs of pipe that it's running through. All right, next we're going to talk about a standard workflow, and this could be different depending on what you're building. So normally you will start out with your rough dimensioning, your rough cutting. This can include breaking down sheets of plywood. This could include rough dimensioning of your lumber, such as cutting long 12-foot boards down into smaller sections that you can more easily manage or are closer to the dimension you need for your finished product. Next, after you do your rough dimensioning, you would likely go on to what I would call finish dimensioning, and that would include getting your final dimensions in terms of making it the thickness that you need it, making it the length that you need it, making it the width that you need it. And this is going to be done again on some sort of either chop saw, table saw, jointer, or planer. Any combination of those tools are likely going to play into that process depending on what you're building. Next, we're going to move on to assembly. Depending again on what you're building, you may have a very small product that you can just put together on a little card table or on a small workbench or even right on your table saw. I've done that for plenty of builds. You, however, on the other side of things, may have a large piece of furniture that you need a dedicated area for, or an auxiliary table to extend off your normal workbench to give you enough room to assemble things on. Those are all important things to consider when you're deciding your layout. Now let's move on to finishing. Now, anybody that knows me knows I like to finish fast. I like to get in and get out, get that job done, right?
Yeah, that's sad. That's sad.
Okay, so, but in reality, finishing is a big part of the process, and it's maybe one of the biggest considerations for your layout. Do you have space to have a dedicated finishing station? Can you seal it off from everything else? Do you have space in another part of your home or another part of the workshop, in another building, anything to do that sort of stuff? Now, if you don't have the space to dedicate to a finishing station all on its own, I can provide a couple pieces of advice for you. If you've got an air cleaner that you can put up, or if you can take a box fan and put a filter on it, let that run for a couple hours after you've done all your assembly, all your cleanup, all of that, that will clean all the dust out of the air. Now, this assumes that you've cleaned the dust off all your surfaces as well. If you don't have a dust cleaner, or an air cleaner rather, you can blow all of your dust out of the shop or clean it up the best you can, and then just let it rest for a few hours again, and avoid having any fans or anything like that. If you don't have an air cleaner and you're not sure about what could be floating around in the air still, I would likely advise you to stay away from any sort of spray-on finish with a powered sprayer. A spray can, not a big deal, but if you bring in a powered sprayer, it's likely going to uplift some of the dust that's around, and cause that dust to fall on the finish of whatever you're working on. And from experience, if you get, let's say, dust particles on an epoxy table or something, it can create a not a very nice finish. All right. Okay. Now, why can it never be right? Why will it never be right? There's plenty of reasons for that. The main thing is things change, situations change, people change, the products you build change. There's so many things that change. You can't be set on one layout. You have to be willing, in my opinion, to adapt. Otherwise, as you grow as a woodworker, as you grow as a builder, a DIY, or whatever it is, if you don't adapt to the way things are progressing, the products you're building, the workflow that you're actually doing, you're actually going to create more stress for yourself by trying to do things with your old layout than you would to spend a little bit of time, maybe reposition tools in a little bit different areas so that it works better with the products you're now selling. Or maybe you're going into more of a mass production style thing where like you're gonna focus in on a single product. Or you've got, maybe you're not going to build things for people, but maybe you're going to have a year where you're doing something specific for yourself. Maybe there's something in the house that you're building. You're gonna be making all new cabinets for everywhere in your house that you have cabinets. Maybe that's going to take a year or 6 months or something. It might be worth investigating the possibility of arranging your tools or your layout just a little bit differently, even just for that time span until you get that project done. All right. All right, that's it for today. I'm going to leave you with this one comment. Don't be afraid to change the layout if it's necessary. Don't be afraid to spend a little bit of time planning your layout, but don't think you have to have it all figured out right away. Do something that works for you now and be willing to adapt and change that as your processes, your skill level, your tools grow with you, and you grow in your career or grow as a DIYer. So all that said, if you like that, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you like, and I'll catch you on the next one.